Mr. Issa for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really been helpful to hear the questions and answers coming before this, particularly, Mr. Lynch, I appreciate yours, and I certainly appreciate the Transportation Chairman, because I think a lot of people have worked hard on understanding how thoroughly useless this technology currently is. Now, that's an assumption I'm making, but let's walk through it so that I make sure that I have an agreement. At the current time, with 57,000 TSA professionals, we only check a small fraction of the passengers. Isn't that true? If you look at all the places, including San Diego, where, to be honest, we have all of them, all the stations are there, except in order to not back up well past downtown San Diego, they do random, they do anecdotal, if you will. So, first of all, from a security standpoint, we are not secure if the vast majority of passengers do not go through these if they are necessary. Do you all agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that.
You don't agree? You think if we just pick up half of the people, we're going to stop a bomb?
Random screening has a real value for deterring terrorists. They don't want to take the risk that they'll get picked up by the random.
These people are willing to blow themselves up, and you think they're scared of getting caught?
Absolutely. They do not want to get arrested and fail. And so, you know, random screening does have a place. I would prefer that the screening
So, okay. Well, let's continue along, because this is the old problem we have. You take away all of our civil rights, and you say, but it has some value, but certainly not enough. Crazy people who put shoes in their bombs, you're saying that they wouldn't have done it if they thought they might be caught. Is that right, Mr. Baker? They wouldn't have done it if they thought they might be caught?
Much less likely to try that, yes.
Okay. So we'll assume that these products cut in half the likelihood of a bomb blowing up an airplane. We'll give you that. Is it worth 57,000 TSA individuals and the countless billions of dollars to cut in half but not even come close to eliminating that, would be my rhetorical question. Mr. Rothenberg, I want to go through a couple of items with you. If it is possible to have technology do completely automated check using something similar to these products so that there is no human element except an X in the case of a high likelihood of something which is a legitimate anomaly, would you say that when that technology is ready to be used, you would consider it, if it met all of those requirements? I just want to quantify that you're not being unreasonable. You simply want a technology that currently doesn't exist. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think the technology has to be perfect. I don't think it would be realistic to expect a technology to be perfect. I think what I've suggested, as Mr. Chaffetz has, is that the technology should be effective. I think that's reasonable. And I think it should be minimally invasive, because that's what the courts have told us at the Fourth Amendment.
And at the current time, the false positives are huge. I've watched them. I mean, it doesn't take much to go through these lines and see every third or fourth person who actually goes through the machine in a secondary. And by the way, that's after they pause and wait for quite a while before they're allowed to go forward. Mr. Brenner, I'm particularly interested because of your, Dr. Brenner, I'm sorry, your knowledge and experience. Do you remember the fluoroscopes of yesteryear and what they did to people who had their shoes fitted using that technology?
Oh, yes. And those devices continued to be used well after it was pretty well established that there was a risk associated with them.
And my understanding is not only did they increase the likelihood of cancer for those who were having their shoes fitted or those who were using it more often, but they created almost certainty that a shoe salesperson over time would have doses likely to give them cancer and some other problems. Isn't that true?
You're right. The biggest doses were to the salespersons rather than the individuals getting the foot examination.
So clearly these products, although they may be less than the fluoroscopes of old, they're showing about the same thing. They're designed to show about the same thing. They, in fact, represent a high likelihood that our 57,000 TSA individuals who are not badged to see if they're getting excess dosage are getting dosage far higher than the rest of us would, even as frequent travelers.
Well, I'm not sure I know the answer to your question as to whether it's really a high likelihood.
But they're getting higher dosage.
Almost certainly so, but I think we need to measure those doses.
Well, and that's one of the points I think this committee has an obligation to do, is to see that the measurement begins immediately, even if these things are not going to be stopped. Let me go through one more item. I was like Mr. Farenthold, I was a clear passenger. I gave them my retina scan. I gave them all my fingerprints, and I was dismayed when I found out that they thought they were going to sell their asset that, in fact, I'd paid to give them, which is what made me a little worried about things more than I had been in this cyber era. But let me just ask the simple question, and including you, Mr. Baker, since you think that everything helps a little. False ID is easy to get. People get it every day, and they come to this country in vast amounts over the Mexican border a few miles from my district. The IDs that will let you come through the country illegally are the same IDs that TSA looks at with, some level of, does the picture match? Anyone can print out a boarding pass. Anyone can take a boarding pass and effectively make a new boarding pass once you have a few of them. From a standpoint of the actual, is the person who they say they are, and are they actually on the flight that they say they're on, isn't one of the gaping flaws right now that when you go through security anywhere in America, they don't actually know for sure that you're who you say you are because the ID is questionable, and they don't even know that the ticket you have is valid for the flight you're on? Haven't we left gaping holes that should be filled first at a fraction of the cost of what we're looking at here today? Just quick answers from anyone that wants to partake, particularly you, Mr. Baker.
Yes, for sure, bad ID is a problem. TSA has done a much better job than the airlines did of checking those IDs. That's why they have the loops. That's why they have the fluorescent lights. They are checking ID, and they're finding fake ID much more than was the case prior to TSA taking over that responsibility.
Yes, I remember they claimed that my government ID as a congressman was fake, and they wanted to see backup California driver's license, which anybody can get, even if they're not a citizen. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your indulgence. I yield back.
Thanks. The gentleman yields back.